Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant. We welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers. As the season of giving begins, we'll hear from David Heatherly of Mission of Hope about their partnership with WKYT to help students in Appalachia. That's coming up at the end of our broadcast this morning. But first, after a dramatic election year, a transition is underway in Washington. It was a Republican sweep, with the GOP set to control the White House, the U.S. Senate, and the U.S. House in the new year. One of those easily reelected was Central Kentucky Congressman Andy Barr, who will return for his 7th term at the U.S. Capitol. Now, with some seniority, Barr is eyeing a powerful position as chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, where he says he could help bring prices down and rein in regulations. Barr also returns to Washington, where Donald Trump will once again be president. Does Barr support the policies that Trump intends to roll out? And could Barr be tempted if a Kentucky U.S. Senate seat opens up in 2026? Congressman Andy Barr joining us today on Kentucky Newsmakers. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it very much.
Great to be with you.
And congratulations on your recent victory. Voters returned you to Washington. You carried every county in the district. Vice President Kamala Harris carried Lexington by 17 points. You carried Lexington. What do you think voters were saying about you by the results of the election?
Well, you know, what was interesting was, as I looked at the results, it was very gratifying. And it was gratifying to know that the team that I've surrounded myself with, the hardworking, overworked, underpaid staff in my congressional office, both in Washington and D.C., they've really delivered for the people of Central Kentucky. Constituent service, our Veterans Coalition, the casework, getting passports, cutting through the bureaucracy and the red tape, that really makes a difference. Because when you outperform the top of your ticket, as we did, by over 12,000 votes in Lexington alone, that shows you that there were many of our constituents who don't always agree with every vote that I cast in Washington, but they think that I'm doing a good enough job, that my team that I've surrounded myself with are doing a good job in delivering grants for this district, working for the University of Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky University, fighting for the Bluegrass Airport, fighting for that demilitarization at the Army Depot down in Madison County, doing the kind of blocking and tackling enough so that there's a lot of voters out there who just voted for competency. And that's very gratifying.
What's it like to have you have the Washington life and you have to do all of the politics there, but you do have to pay attention to what's happening back here at home?
Job number one is stay focused on your constituents. And every day that I am in Washington and I walk up those Capitol steps and I have that voting card and I vote, the first thing I always have to remind myself is, what would my constituents want me to do with this vote? If you lose touch, and I've been in Washington now for over a decade, and I've seen some of my colleagues lose touch. If you lose touch on the people back home, then you're going to see it in the report card, which comes every 2 years. Fortunately, we got a good report card. 63% voted to return us to Washington for another term, and I think that speaks to the fact that we have stayed accessible and we continue to listen to our constituents.
Polling showed that Americans were paying the most attention to the economy and to the high prices out there. Inflation is down some. What adjustments will Congress and the new president have to make to see further improvements in the economy that people can feel in their wallets?
Right, no doubt that on Election Day, the voters of this country said that by far the number one issue was the economy. These were Americans who voted overwhelmingly for President Trump and for a Republican unified control of Congress. And they said in exit polls and the polls leading up to the election that they were worse off financially than they were 4 years ago, that they had been crushed by higher prices and inflation. And they voted for a change. They voted for Donald Trump. They voted for unified Republican control of Washington, D.C. And now we need to deliver for those voters. And the way we deliver is to turn this economy around and lower prices and end the inflation crisis that has really made life harder for our constituents. And I think the way you do that, it's kind of basic, simple economics. It's supply and demand, and we have to supply. We need to supply more labor through legal immigration and through trade schools and through career and technical education. We need to get more people off of the sidelines through the dignity of work and stop paying people to not work. And then we also have to supply energy. We've gone through this 4 years of a war on domestic energy production. We have a new president-elect who's going to restore energy dominance. We're going to supply, and energy goes into everything, and that gets passed down into trucking, into transportation costs, into groceries, into the price of housing. So more energy means lower costs. And then finally, in my area, more access to capital. And we need to bring down inflation so that we can bring down the cost of credit, bring down interest rates so that the dream of home ownership is more affordable, so that we can unleash the entrepreneurial spirit in this country, and so that if you want to start a business, you can go to your community bank or your credit union, you can get a loan that's affordable, and you can build a Main Street business.
President-elect Trump has indicated he will use tariffs. Some in Kentucky, including the bourbon industry, have some concerns. Some state leaders say they have been reaching out to the federal delegation. Have you heard from them? And
Absolutely.
Do you share their concerns?
I do share their concerns. We have a reprieve right now. There are no tariffs from Europe on our bourbon exports. When we had tariffs in place from 2018 to 2021, we saw a precipitous decline in U.S. whiskey exports into Europe. We have also seen that when the tariffs came off, that those exports went back up. So March of 2025 is when those tariffs are set to snap back, this time at 50%. That would be devastating for the Kentucky bourbon export market. We need to make sure that we work with the new Trump administration, which, as you said, has promised to use tariffs as a negotiating tool. We've got to make sure that we extricate the spirits business from these other tariffs so that we don't have those tariffs come back. So I will definitely be having conversations with the incoming administration about how to do that. But also,
are you hopeful that you will be heard in that regard?
I think I will. So I've already had a conversation with the nominee for the Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick. He knows how important this is to me. Lighthizer, who was the former USTR for the Trump administration, he heard from me all the time, as did Secretary Mnuchin when he was Treasury Secretary. Scott Bessent, the nominee for Treasury Secretary, and I've already spoken about this. I'm co-chair of the Congressional Bourbon Caucus. This is a really big deal. But we don't want to just be on defense and prevent tariffs from coming on against our bourbon. We also want to go on offense. I recently met with the ambassador from India to the United States. The tariffs on bourbon exports to India are 150%, and that's the largest market in the world, 1.4 billion people. We want to lower the tariffs, the Indian tariffs on American whiskey exports, so that we can really access that huge market.
Congressman, you are hoping for a plum position in the House, working to become the chairman of the House Financial Services Committee. What would you do in that position? And this is an election that includes some of your close friends, right?
Yeah, there are four of us who are vying to be the next chairman of the House Financial Services Committee. The current chairman is retiring, so there's a vacancy there. I have chaired different subcommittees on that committee in the last 4 Congresses. I now want to lead the full committee. I have a vision and I have a plan. I think our committee is uniquely positioned to be part of that 100-day agenda for the new Trump administration and the new unified Congress. The American people sent a message and they gave us a mandate, and what they want is to lower inflation, and they want economic growth. And we need to deliver for 2 reasons. Number one, because the American people sent a message that they want economic growth and they want lower inflation, and we now need to deliver for them. But also because of the national debt. The national debt is now $36 trillion, and let's face it, we need fiscal discipline. We need to stop the spending spree that caused inflation. But that's not going to be enough. We are going to have to grow. In fact, we're going to have to produce more economic growth over the next 5 to 10 years in this country than we've ever done in the history of our country, just to make sure that this is a sustainable debt. What we need to do is grow the economy so much that what we owe shrinks relative to the size of GDP. I think we can do that. And the way we do that is to unleash our capital markets.
And you have said that you do some of that through deregulation. What do you say, though, to those who have concerns that a lot of the rules that were put in place are because of what happened in 2008 and 2009? Aren't there a lot of regulations that are in place to protect consumers from excesses?
Yeah, sure. And I think some of the bank capital requirements that were put on the banks have made our banking system much more stable and resilient as a result of some of those. We've been fighting new capital rules that would gold plate the regulations on major U.S. banks and make us less competitive. But look, here's the key. The key to financial stability is the diversity of our banking system. And right now, we're getting so much regulation on our banks that it's actually concentrating risk. It's making our banking system more risky because banks are consolidating into too big to fail banks. What we need are more community banks. What we need are more regional banks, mid-sized banks. And those institutions which are suffering under one-size-fits-all regulations, that actually is hurting the resiliency of our system. So the key to our competitiveness is the diversity of our banking system, number one, which diffuses risk. And it's also key to our competitiveness because most of the new business formation, the entrepreneurship in our country comes from those community banks, those community financial institutions. Frankly, the banks in central Kentucky. That's what we need to do. We need to support that diversity of our banking system, and that's what I'm proposing in what I would call, if I'm asked to lead the committee, the American Dream Act. When you see big transformational bills come out of Washington, a lot of times what you'll see is that these big pieces of legislation are named after the politicians who proposed them. Think of Dodd-Frank. We're not going to do that. We're going to do something totally different. We're going to name this bill after the people we serve. We're going to name this bill after the American people, and we're going to call it the American Dream Act, because the American people do believe, and they said this on Election Day, they feel like the American dream is slipping away. The idea that with hard work and determination, every American should have a chance to succeed. We're going to restore the American dream with the American Dream Act through the power of free market capitalism.
Largely with assistance to those mid-sized banks, is that?
Yes, more enhanced regulatory tailoring, which means that regional banks, mid-sized banks, and those small community banks that serve us in central Kentucky, they will not have to contend with the same regulations that apply to J.P. Morgan Chase or Bank of America or Citibank. Those big banks, those types of regulations may be important for them, but they shouldn't apply to our local hometown banks.
You have largely said you support a plan to secure U.S. borders. We know that Senator Rand Paul has said he will not support using the military for mass deportations that has been at least hinted at by the president-elect. What would be your position on that? On the use of the U.S. military to do the deportations or to assist in?
Well, I think, look, we have a tradition in this country of not using the military for civilian purposes. Here, though, I would just say we do have a national security issue. The national security issue being that because we've had an open border over the last 3.5, 4 years, we have a number of people who have come into this country, 12 million people, over 2 million known gotaways, and we've seen a surge of individuals from, let's face it, countries that are adversaries to the United States. And so some modest use of the military, I think, would be appropriate for national security reasons. But I would also say this. What we need to do is bolster the Border Patrol. We have an excellent Customs and Border Protection Agency. They're just under-resourced. We can do the job and we can secure the border. If we passed H.R. 2, which is the bill that I voted for in the last Congress, that would surge resources, yes, finish the infrastructure, the border wall, and more lights, cameras, sensors, the technology, the drones, we need all of that as well. But more Border Patrol agents. And this is why the National Border Patrol Council endorsed me in my race, because they know that I'm there for supporting additional manpower and additional resources for Border Patrol and border security.
Safe to say you would prefer a boost in law enforcement?
Yeah, the Department of Homeland Security can do the job if they're adequately resourced. Because there's national security implications, the National Guard is a great supplement.
All right, these are perilous times around the world. How do you think the U.S. should proceed in its assistance to Ukraine?
Well,
or should it?
So here's the interesting thing about the Ukraine debate is that you've got to go back and you've got to look at why Putin invaded Ukraine back in 2021 after Crimea. So during the first Trump administration, President Trump made NATO countries pay their share under the treaty. He also put sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline to deprive Putin of the revenues that he needed to build up his war machine. He also placed defensive weapons, anti-aircraft weapons in Poland and Eastern Europe. He also did not orchestrate a disastrous retreat from Afghanistan that the Biden administration did. All of that was to maintain a level of deterrence. Unfortunately, all of those policies were reversed when Biden and Harris came into office. Unilateral removal of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline sanctions, a disastrous retreat from Afghanistan that signaled that we were not going to stay with our allies, and then refusal to do anything when there was a year of military buildup.
All right, there's some context. How do we proceed?
So the point is, I think that the new administration is going to reimpose some of that deterrence. Tougher sanctions on energy exports. That's what I'm advocating for. More additional requirements from NATO to actually step up and create that additional deterrence. And I think that creates the leverage for a diplomatic solution in Ukraine. I do not believe that Putin should just be allowed to run over Ukraine. That would be a disaster for NATO, and it would send a very bad signal to Beijing as well.
Tensions remain high in the Middle East, and you continue to monitor that. Is the United States policy likely to significantly change there?
Well, it's interesting because in the aftermath of the election of Donald Trump, you saw Hamas already talking about a settlement. And what does a settlement mean that honors our key democratic ally, Israel, the democracy in Israel? It means all of the hostages returned. It means degrading Hamas from ever being able to have the capability of carrying out an October 7th ever again, and maintaining the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of the state of Israel. And we're not there yet, but that would be the terms of a negotiated, durable peace.
It appears Kentucky could have an open U.S. Senate seat in 2026 if Senator McConnell decides against seeking re-election. If McConnell does decide to leave the Senate, are you interested in running for that seat?
Well, I'd have to take a look at it. I think many of my fellow Kentuckians, whether they're in office or not, would take a look at that because those are huge shoes to fill. Leader McConnell has been absolutely critical in giving Kentucky the leverage in Washington, and we've outkicked our coverage, as Senator McConnell likes to say a lot. He hasn't made any decision yet. So bottom line is, I think anyone would have to take a look at that. Right now, I'm focused on this race for chairman.
Have you given any thought to how you might stand out in a multi-candidate field if that's what happens in the Senate race?
Well, here's what I would say about that is, as I look at statewide races in Kentucky, as Kentucky has changed and has become a much more red state, very Trump-oriented state, I look at the Democrats who have performed well statewide. Governor Beshear, for example. Governor Beshear won the 6th congressional district. I think the only way a Democrat, just based on the facts that I've seen, the only way a Democrat can win statewide in Kentucky is to win the 6th congressional district. I just won the 6th congressional district by 63% of the vote. I think that's really, really important, is whoever is our nominee, if Leader McConnell decides to step down, and by the way, that's not for sure. Leader McConnell has $8 million in the bank. He's still raising money. But I think whoever we nominate needs to be able to carry the 6th congressional district, because there is no path for a Democrat statewide if they don't carry the 6th district like Andy Beshear did in his 2 governor's races.
Congressman, thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
Happy holidays to you.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, everybody, we'll be back in just a moment, and we'll hear about what's happening with Mission of Hope this year and WKYT's partnership with that important organization. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. WKYT very pleased to again partner with Mission of Hope to provide a special Christmas for children in 29 rural Appalachian elementary schools. The collection of toys, clothing, and hygiene products and donations for food for this year's Christmas drive is underway. Joining us now is David Heatherly with Mission of Hope. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us.
This program approaching its 30th year, the needs continue. Talk about this Christmas drive.
You know, it does. We're really setting out to bring a little bit of hope at this Christmas time for a bunch of schools throughout southeast Kentucky. The whole idea is to make sure that each one of our children understand that Christmas isn't a stretch for them, that when they wake up on Christmas morning, we're going to make sure they have toys, clothing, food, and hygiene.
The word hope is purposeful,
It
right?
really is.
How powerful is it for people to realize that somebody does care about them?
Well, if you lose hope, then what else do you have? And some of our children, that's what they have. You know, when you look at some of the counties we serve, there's 64% high school graduation rates. Something's going on. So we want to make sure we come in at the early stages and we give each child a little bit of hope that there's something else out there, that there's someone that loves them, that there's something greater than maybe what they're experiencing right now.
Again, this has gone on for years. I'm sure there are stories of people who tell you that it did make a difference in their lives growing up.
It really does. And the great thing about this program is it doesn't stop at elementary school, right? We continue on with high school. We give college scholarships to kids. And what's amazing now is we have children who have graduated from college on the Mission of Hope Scholarship that are now teachers in those same elementary schools that are telling those kids about what they experienced with Mission of Hope.
So your mission is year-round, really, and you have other drives as well, right?
We do. We operate all year round. We help out over 53 different nonprofits in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Virginia. And what we do is we bring a little bit of hope to them through clothing, furniture, food, anything that they need if a house burns down, if someone just needs a little bit of help, if they need additional furniture. We work through those nonprofits to make sure they're taking care of their communities.
David, what is it like when those items are delivered to a school? Describe that scene for us.
Well, you know, we apologize to the teachers up front because as soon as we show up to the school, the day's done, right? I mean, those kids, they tell us they're waiting on us in the mornings. And we have one school in particular that we go to when we're driving down the hill towards the school, the kids can see the box truck. And so what you look at when you get near it is these kids that have their hands and their face on the window looking at our truck coming in because they know we're bringing them something special.
We've started collecting here at WKYT. You were just in the lobby and you saw that. And so our hope is that we can fill that lobby and that you can fill a box truck, certainly, to take to those communities. And that is coming up later on this week as this program is running. We look forward to that. You do too?
We appreciate everything you guys do. And it's so important because of the sheer number of toys that we have to raise, to be able to bring that little piece of hope, to make sure that each of our children, when they wake up on Christmas morning, there's at least something there for them.
can folks help you? We look for folks to drop off items here at WKYT on Thursday, December 5th from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m., so we make it convenient. It's a labor of love, certainly for us, but what should folks bring?
Well, we're looking for a brand new toy. Now remember, everything we give our kids at Christmas is brand new. And so we're looking for small toys that we can put inside of a box and ship, of course. We also are looking for coats. They're always needed at this time of the year. And between those two items, that could cover everything that we need.
You'll also take financial donations?
We will. If you want to come by and drop off money, if you want to go to missionofhope.org, and I think it'll be on your website as well, you can click through that link and donate to what we're attempting to do as well.
What do you want people to know about your organization?
The amazing thing about Mission of Hope is it's all volunteer-led. We only have about 4 people that are paid to be a part of Mission of Hope, and we serve well over 10,000 children each year. Last year it took 521 unique volunteers just to do our Christmas program the way we do it. And so on behalf of all those volunteers, on behalf of all these children, this is an amazing way to give back to somebody that you may never meet. And so it's just an amazing opportunity to be a part of something special.
How do you think it's endured this long?
Well, you know, you've got a lot of people in communities such as Lexington, Knoxville, and all these different places where they just want to give and help people. That's just kind of who we are as individuals. And I think that's what's made this so special for so long is we know where we're going because it's our people. And we want to make sure that each one of those children in those areas has something special at Christmas because we've been so blessed where we are.
Well, that's well said. I want to thank you for coming by, and I want to thank you for giving WKYT the opportunity to be involved in Mission of Hope.
Well, we appreciate it, and we're honored to be here each year.
Thank you very much.
Stay
with us. We'll wrap up Kentucky Newsmakers in just a moment. We certainly appreciate you joining us for this edition of Kentucky Newsmakers. Remind you that all of our programs are available on WKYT.com, and we'll continue to keep you informed in this week ahead. Again, thanks for joining us, and make it a good week ahead.